I do not feel it strange to travel without my husband because we're two different people. We have two different interests. Travel has changed for me now that I'm 80 because I don't do as much as I used to. I like to be comfortable. I want to travel first class or business class if I can.
When I was younger, my wife and I traveled quite a bit, and we would typically rent a car and drive around to see the sights. And that included driving in Paris, driving in Rome, renting a car in Morocco and driving around the country. Now that I'm older, I don't feel as confident with my driving and would rather have somebody else drive.
Travel has changed in one way. Just in the last year, I have learned that it takes me a little longer to recover. I canceled a trip to see the eclipse, lost that money because I had just gotten back from an East Coast trip. And my body said, you can't do this anymore. So I have learned to give myself time in between trips.
There's all of the logistics that as an older person, either I couldn't do, I wouldn't be as organized. Things were a hassle. It's not so much the group thing as having the organization do all the detailing, the picking up of the luggage, somewhat of a hassle to say, have your bags out at 7. That's far easier for me to do than to worry about dealing with the hotel, making sure the hotel room is correct.
I just think as long as you can go, go. I think it keeps us going. And so for those of us who have always loved travel, I just say, as long as we can do it, let's do it.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman.
Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF, a nonprofit providing older adults in San Francisco with support to help age in place. Also by the Fromm Institute for Lifelong Learning and Shannon Greavy of A Bigger Room. I'm your co-host, Lynn Winter Gross.
Today on Not Born Yesterday, we're talking about yet another way to keep you active and engaged in life. How? By traveling. Stepping out of your routine to visit new places can help slow memory decline, and learning about new places and languages can improve brain health. Planning travel itineraries, navigating unfamiliar cities, exploring museums, adapting to different cultures, meeting new people, practicing different languages, and seeing new sights can strengthen us mentally, physically, and socially.
Of course, today's seniors are as diverse as any other generation. The biggest difference is if we're retired, we have more time for travel, and we're not limited to just the few weeks vacation that we had when we were working. Like other travelers of all ages, seniors travel to visit family, learn about the countries of our ancestors, or explore new destinations. And travel companies are responding to seniors' needs with tour options ranging from independent to fully guided, budget to luxury, and groups to individual. Adventure travel, guided biking, walking, and hiking tours are now geared toward older adults, but also include options for families traveling with adult children or their grandchildren. To get us started on a journey, explore new things, and stay active, our guest today is Kelsey Perri, Director of Public Relations for Road Scholar, a travel company providing educational travel programs geared toward older adults. Kelsey, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let's start with the obvious. Why is travel so good for older adults?
It's stimulating you in so many different ways. So there's the physical stimulation of actually, being out and traveling, and whether it's, an outdoor adventure or not, you're still doing a lot of physical stimulation. Even I think enrolling in a program and booking a trip can motivate you to, get out there and walk every day because you have this goal that you're reaching toward or that you're preparing for. So there's the physical stimulation. There's the intellectual stimulation, as you were saying, Miriam, is, just putting yourself out of your comfort zone and trying something new, or having to navigate airports and having to be flexible with things. Those are all, ways to flex your mental, not only your intellectual stimulation, but these skills of being flexible and being adaptable.
So, tour companies that are catering to seniors come in different forms. As I had mentioned, there's all kinds of senior tours, but what do you think are some of the features that senior travel companies offer that do differ from other travel companies?
Well, I think one thing that we think about a lot is mobility and activity level. That's a big thing with older adults. And so that is a diverse group of people. You're right. And so there's people that have very different mobility levels and activity levels, and not just physical ability, but also just desires. Some people want to go out and go hiking, and some people want to do more of a city tour, even if you're doing a lot of moving, in hilly cities. So having just, I think we're all thinking about having a range of activity levels and physical for people with different physical abilities, and also being really transparent about what is required of, if you're going with a tour operator or a travel organization, is we try to be really clear about what's expected from every trip that we do, because you have to be honest with yourself and know what your abilities are. It's not fun for anybody if you show up to a trip and it's not a good fit for your physical ability. It's not fun for you. It's not fun for the other participants either. So I think that's something that's really, really important when you're talking about serving older adults.
I was just thinking, I've been in places where they get you up very early in the morning so you can get to the crowded sites before everybody else gets there. And yet, when I was just on a Rhodes Scholar trip in Nashville, one of the people, she was 85, but very active, she said, I can't get up before noon. I can't do the morning things. And she should have known that, I guess, before she signed up. But, as long as she told the leaders and they didn't have to look for her, it worked out.
Right. I mean, it's very flexible. If you want to sit out of things, you absolutely can. But I think you're right. I think that's a strategy for travel companies, is trying to get places early. I also think it's good to start early, because then you can have a time later before dinner to have a rest. You kind of build that time in, which is really nice. Get off your feet and take a nap, or do what kind of other, rest you need to do.
Kelsey, I understand that there's companies that make all the arrangements like flights and hotels, but the tour people are on their own during the day to visit their own sites, whatever they want, their museums, or just hang out. Do you think those are good for people that haven't traveled in a while, where there's no set itinerary during the day?
I think it just depends on the person. To me, the benefit of working with a company is that everything is taken care of for you. That takes off so much stress. You're working with experts who know the times to show up places. They've made the restaurant reservations for you, so you don't have to do the research of what restaurant to go to. You show up and your table is ready for you. You don't have to stand in line for tickets for a museum just to find out that it's sold out. So to me, if it's either like go with a group or don't go with a group, right? So like if you're not a group travel person, then probably just do it independently.
So you had told me earlier that you've noticed that many of your travelers are married people who are traveling without their spouses. It's because some have interests that their partners don't have, or their spouses may not be healthy enough for the kind of tour that it is. Is this a new trend in travel, or has it been going on for a while?
It's something that has only been on my radar as of recent, well, in the last 5 years, I would say. Nobody's really studied it before, so I don't know that there's research that would be able to support that it's been going on for a while. But I love this trend. I think it's so fascinating. I started to realize it when a friend of mine who travels with Rhodes Scholar, she was blogging for us, and I built up a friendship with her. She had written a blog about 8 reasons why I travel without my husband. Kind of a quippy, like funny title, right? Very clickbaity in a way. But she raised so many good points in that blog about all the reasons that she and her husband either travel separately or she travels, without him. And I started to just notice more and more as I paid attention to that anecdotally in our Facebook groups. And I'd been seeing a lot in that Facebook group, more and more women saying, I really want to travel, but my husband doesn't. Does anybody have any advice? And this just was, I was noticing it as a trend. And so I wanted to study it. So we did a study and we did a survey. And I would have seen it as a trend even if 30% of our solo travelers were married, but 60% of them are married and traveling without a spouse. And that number blew my mind because that's really pretty crazy. And I think it's such a mark of the generation. As I said, we are 2/3 of our participants are boomers now, and boomer women are very independent and driven and adventurous. And I think boomers are also, again, not to generalize, but relationships and marriages are more independent and trusting in a way. It's like, I think it would have been unheard of for the generations before for a woman to go off and leave her husband at home by himself while she traveled the world. So it's sort of it's a generational thing, but I think it's also just like where we are in society, like where we are in time, where that's sort of more acceptable and less taboo for a woman to like leave her husband and go travel the world.
Do you see that married men are also coming solo without their wives?
They are, but much smaller numbers. I would say so 85% of our solo travelers are women. So that's a much smaller sample when you're looking at the men. And the other thing I think that's kind of tweaking those numbers is that women take surveys and men don't as often. So the people who responded to the survey were mostly women. So does that mean that the men aren't traveling without spouses? Maybe not, but they're not, I think that's tweaking the numbers a little bit, but it's definitely happening as well. But one of the things is we asked people, because there's a lot of reasons why a married person might travel without their spouse. Maybe their spouse is not retired yet and they don't have as much time. Maybe they aren't as physically active. Maybe they have health issues. But we surveyed those married people and said, why don't you travel with your spouse? And the number one reason was my spouse is not interested in traveling. So, it's really like, what is wrong with these men is what I want to know now. Like, I am more interested than ever to now look at the men and survey them and say, why don't you want to travel? What can we do to entice you to travel? Not just because we want more travelers on our trips, but older men are at a greater risk of social isolation and loneliness in older adulthood, especially after retirement. And this is a group of people that is very vulnerable that we are not reaching. And so what can we do to actually encourage them to come out and travel more? I think once we get them in the door, they'll like it and they'll stay. But it's like, how can we communicate with them differently or have different programs to entice them? Like, what's going to get them to actually do it?
To change the subject for a minute, what about people who are going to countries that they've never been to before? How should we learn about the local culture and what to do and what not to do that may be different from what we're used to in our country of how to dress, how to act, times to eat? How do people best learn about the local culture of the country they're going to?
I mean, well, you can definitely do research ahead of time and do some Googling, see what's out there. But I think that's also one of the benefits of going with an organization who has the local connections, who has the local group leaders who they live in that place and they will guide you through that. They know the language, so you don't have to worry about language barriers. So whether you go with a group like Road Scholar or even if you're going independently, I would really encourage you to find a local guide that can give you like a city tour or something like that so that you can talk to them about those things and they can walk you through some of that.
One of the essential things for avoiding unwanted attention as a tourist, and I guess avoiding danger as well, is that you try to blend in with the locals as much as possible. I'm not saying you have to go buy, local clothes because Americans are always going to look different. But for example, I've been told don't use a map. Use the map on your phone. If you're standing on a corner looking at your phone, that's pretty common everywhere in the world. But if you're standing with a map all spread out and you're trying to figure it out, that says, oh, tourists, oh, we can go take advantage of them. Are there any other things like that you've noticed that people should do so that they don't stand out?
As far as independent travel, I think the map example is really good. I think doing as much research as you can ahead of time to navigate where you're going so you don't even have to rely on your map at all is a good thing to do. Thinking about what you're wearing. Anything that makes you look really identifies you as an American with logos on it or words or anything, I would say try to dress, as down as possible. Even I find it for packing in general too, to just mix and match very basic colors so that you don't have to pack as much. So I think that also helps with just blending in, is just wearing very simple clothes.
Are there other things that older adults should consider when deciding what tour to go on or how to travel. Like, I better find a hotel with an elevator. I shouldn't arrive late at night. I better know about the walking, like we talked about a little bit about before, what my stamina will be. Are there certain things that older adults should look for?
Yeah, stamina and the activity demands is definitely one big thing. I would say I always recommend coming in a day or two before if you're doing a group tour, or even adding an extra day that you think that is just kind of to adjust to the time zone, to adjust to the elevation. If you're going somewhere that has a different elevation, think about that as well. You're gonna feel different, because if you do that before you dive into whatever activities you're doing, then you can go into it well rested with a clear mind, and you'll just have a better time the rest of the trip. So I would say that as well. Speaking of the mobility, also, a lot of our participants bring walking poles on their programs, and it does not have to be a hiking trip to bring walking poles. If you have balance issues, because balance is different than stamina, if you have balance issues, having the hiking poles on a city tour, or if you're going to a city, if there's cobblestones, things like that, that can be helpful as well. Although that may make you look a little bit more like a tourist. I'm not sure. So
We always are talking on this podcast about the new technologies. And I'm sure there's a lot of new technologies associated with travel. For example, languages. I mean, I've seen people say something into their phone and then it translates into the language, and they can show it to a concierge or a person in a hotel. Are you familiar with any of these new apps, and would you suggest them for travelers?
and a smartphone just kind of does it all now. I think it's more about different apps, I guess, to look at. I mean, I think Google Maps is one that I rely on the most for sure. Downloading the map of the area where you are, um, before you get there is really helpful because you may not have access to Wi-Fi. I always recommend making sure that your phone works in a different country if you're traveling. There's ticket apps. I have, if you're traveling to a country, say you're going to be in France for a whole week or for a couple of weeks. You could get the train. I'm sure they have a train, app for train travel. Airline apps are great, so that you'll get immediate notifications if a flight is running late. Translation apps, as you said, can be really nice. You can actually speak into the phone and it will translate it. Especially, I don't use those a lot, but I think it just helps me, like, knowing that it's on my phone in case I really am in a bind in case of emergency. It has, you have that as a backup plan. Um, Banking apps, even, like, you think about that when you're traveling, you can easily let them know that you're traveling through the apps, and that kind of thing.
You talked about banking, which makes me think about money, which makes me think about travel insurance. Do you recommend that people get travel insurance? Who knows what can come? On the other hand, it's like, oh no, more money. I'm supposed to put out more money for this trip.
I know. I always recommend it. I get it myself. I think it's especially important for older adults. There's always questions about, you never know what's going to happen with your health. I always recommend getting the cancel for any reason upgrade as well. Just, again, you don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, I absolutely say, get travel insurance. But also, another thing to think about with that is look at what travel and what insurance your credit card has, because a lot of credit cards will cover you if you have to cancel a trip. So see what your credit cards have first. You don't need to double pay for something that you already have. If you're traveling a lot, you can get actually like an annual travel insurance plan that can save you money. That'll cover you for the whole year. And then there's two different sides to travel insurance. There's cancellation insurance, and then there's the medical insurance piece of it. So if you're traveling in the US, you probably don't have to really worry so much about the medical because you have, your medical insurance in the country. But if you're traveling internationally, that's when you really want to make sure you have those health benefits. But even if you're traveling in the US, if you're going on a hiking trip, you might want the health insurance piece for, emergency medical evacuation. If you had to be evacuated from a mountain where you're hiking, those are things that can be included as well. So yeah, I mean, I always say it's always better safe than sorry. You never know what's going to happen. And especially for older adults, there's always questions about that. So
No, at the beginning, we did mention for a minute people traveling with their families, with adult children, and with grandchildren. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is and how valuable it is for the cross-generational culture?
Absolutely. So when I first started working at Road Scholar, when I found out we had grandparent programs and what that concept was, that just blew my mind. I thought this is the coolest thing ever. And so the idea of being able to have been able to go on a trip with just me and my grandma just sounds like just magical to me. And so I think that we do have family programs that are 3 generations, but it's just a different vibe when it's just the grandparent and the grandkid, or 2 grandparents and 2 cousins that are, their grandkids together. Taking out that middle generation, taking the parents out of the equation, the kids act differently. Believe me, I have a 3-year-old. He is so much better for my mom than he is for me. So the kids act differently, but also it gives you an opportunity to get to know your grandkid on just a more personal person-to-person level that you don't get when the parents are there. I don't know exactly why that is, but you get to share experiences that only the 2 of you have as memories for the rest of your lives, and you're able to share your passions with them. I think that's not only does it create wonderful memories, but it can really bond the 2 of you and make you closer. It's great for whether you have grandkids that live close, but especially if you have grandkids that live farther away, because you don't have a lot of those opportunities. So if you have to travel to see them anyway, you might as well both travel and go somewhere cool.
So is there anything else that we need to remind people that maybe they haven't traveled in a while because of COVID, or maybe they're starting again on their own? Maybe they had always traveled with their family just to visit relatives before. And anything that you think people might forget that's involved in travel?
Or they say, I can't deal with airplanes and airports and planes being delayed. I just can't do that anymore.
To that, I would say pack your flexibility. You need to be flexible. And this is an exercise in flexibility. And it will make your life better when you come home, because you will be a more flexible person. And when things go wrong at home, you'll be more flexible. You'll be more adaptable. It's great to push yourself out of your comfort zone if you're concerned about those things. As far as what else being a little rusty about, again, I just always arrive early. Just plan to I get to the airport so early. I go like 2 to 3 hours early. I just like to build a lot of extra time in my schedule so that it takes some stress off. And if something does go wrong, then you're not in such a tight time frames. That's in general good advice for anybody, I think, but especially if you haven't traveled in a while, because there's going to be things that come up that are a little bit different, and it gives you a little more time built in to navigate some of those differences.
Well, thank you so much for your insight and all your information about travel. I'm sure a lot of people are getting ready to pack right now. So our guest was Kelsey Perri of Road Scholar.
Thank you.
Today on News You Can Use, we're discussing a social media term that sometimes confuses older adults. Many of us are adept at using our computers and communicating via Zoom. But every once in a while, we find ourselves confronted with a new term that makes the younger generations think we're too old for social media. So let's get started. Hashtags. A hashtag is the pound sign. It's already on our keyboards, on our computer, and on our iPhone in the numbers section. It looks like the sharp note in music.
And when it comes to social media, the hashtag is used to draw attention, organize, promote, and connect. Hashtags started on Twitter as a way of making it easier for people to find, follow, and contribute to a conversation. And although Twitter has a new name, you can still use hashtags on any other social media like X, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or many others. Now, you don't need any coding experience or special software to create a hashtag. The only thing you need to do is put the pound sign directly in front of the word or phrase you want to turn into a hashtag and follow these simple rules. No spaces, no punctuation, no special characters.
So why would we use hashtags in social media? Hashtags help our audience find us. When you use hashtags, your posts on social media like Facebook become searchable by anyone on the platform. Many people search specific hashtags. So by using hashtags that are of interest, you increase your chance of being found. When you search hashtags of your interest, you're able to join a bigger conversation and connect with others on that topic. So let's say you're interested in finding the best hiking trails in Italy. You might post the hashtag awesome hiking trails Italy and post it on social media, and you will soon receive responses you find helpful.
Something else to be aware of, hashtags can be seen by people you may not want to see them. Your boss might see that you were complaining about your job, or your brother may see something negative or private that you said about him. So be careful. There are lots of privacy settings on social platforms to make sure only the people you want to see your posts can see what you're up to. Not being experts ourselves, please look those up on your own.
And one last thing, like too many other things, beware of scammers. Even people who claim to be in your alumni group or followers of the same political candidate you support could be scammers. So never, never, never give away your personal information. And remember, if you comment on a public page, anyone can see it. And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks to our guest, Kelsey Perri of Rhodes Scholar. You can learn more about Next Village SF, their website, nextvillagesf.org. And check out the FrommInstitute.org, which offers a wide range of learning opportunities for older adults. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Jason Dahlstedt is our engineer. Shannon Greavy of A Bigger Room is our social media consultant. And we thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. Contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And please subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. All of these are free and help us know our audience better. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.